Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking on a really specific mission, a high-stakes one, actually. We're not just, reviewing a syllabus. We're kind of
Yeah.
performing an audit on the auditors themselves.
That's a good way to put it.
Specifically, we are cracking open the strategic mindset you absolutely need to ace the ACCA Audit and Assurance exam, the AA paper.
That's right. And our source material today is just phenomenal. We are diving deep into a really comprehensive analysis. It's built from 5 years, that's June 2019, right through to December 2023 of ACCA examiner reports.
9 years worth. Wow.
Yeah, and the supporting technical articles too. This report, which, we've really internalized, it's designed to be the ultimate strategic roadmap. It bypasses all that generic study stuff.
And focuses purely on scoring high marks.
Exactly, high marks, getting you over that line comfortably.
So think of this as getting the answer key. Maybe not for the content itself, but definitely for the structure.
Yeah, structure is key.
This whole deep dive isn't just about what you need to know. It's about how the examiner expects you to write that knowledge down, how to present it for maximum credit.
It really is the essential shortcut, we think, moving beyond just scraping a pass and hitting that, strategic 65-plus score.
And most students, let's be honest, they barely glance at the examiner reports for their own sitting, right?
Oh, absolutely. Let alone analyze 5 years of data looking for patterns and, consistent scoring models.
So that's the real value proposition here. We're basically giving you the examiner-aligned advantage.
This structured approach, it's based on observable feedback, actual examiner comments year after year, and the claim is it can save you hours, maybe days of effort.
And potentially save you an entire exam attempt, the cost, the stress.
Potentially, yes, because
Yeah.
you stop making the mistakes they complain about every single time.
Okay, so we'll be distilling the absolute highest yield strategies today. But look, if you want the full, comprehensive blueprint, the structured templates, the specific language to use, the full 10-sitting topic tracker we mentioned,
Yeah, all the detailed workings.
then you should absolutely download the complete premium examiner strategy report for the ACCA JRA exam. It's on the SmartPass store on Gumroad.
And the link for that tactical edge is ready for you, right there in the description below this video. It's worth getting hold of if you're serious about AA.
Definitely. Now, looking at those 5 years of feedback, what's really fascinating, you said, is the sheer consistency.
It's incredible, really, the consistency of the complaint. The examiner isn't failing students generally for a lack of knowledge. They know the stuff, mostly.
So what's the problem then?
It's the lack of structured application. Mastery of structure and applying it to the scenario consistently trumps just knowing generic facts.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this then with some immediate tactical value. We'll start with the failure analysis. Section 1 is all about what the reports identify as the 5 big mistakes.
Yeah, the fundamental recurring frustrations, you see them cited in pretty much every report from 2019 right up to the latest ones.
And the good news.
The good news is these mistakes are structural, which means they're fixable. If you, listening now, address these 5 issues, your score should jump immediately because you stop annoying the examiner.
Don't annoy the examiner. Rule number 1. Okay, mistake number 1, and you said this is the big one, generic audit risk answers.
Oh, it's the perennial frustration. Honestly, the
Yeah.
examiner back in the June 2021 report, I think it was completely unambiguous. They said, many candidates continue to give vague and generic risks not linked to the scenario. These do not score.
So just writing, there's a risk of misstatement in trade receivables.
Exactly that. That's a statement of fact for pretty much every audit client on the planet. It gives no context for this client.
And earns 0 credit.
0 credit. Waste of ink.
Okay, so if that fails miserably, what actually scores? The strategy report outlines this essential 3-part audit risk format. You can't skip any step, right?
Not a single one. You need all 3.
Tell us the 3 parts. Why is each one non-negotiable?
Okay, part 1. State the risk clearly. That means identifying the specific financial statement area, revenue, inventory, whatever, and the type of misstatement, overstatement, understatement, maybe a valuation issue.
Right. Specific area, specific issue.
Part 2. Explain why this specific risk exists in this specific client. This is where you absolutely must inject the scenario details.
Like the new accounting system
Or the aggressive revenue policy they mention, or those specific overdue receivables figures in the appendix. You use the case.
Okay. And the critical 3rd part.
Link it directly to the affected assertion, that's the keyword, or the specific impact on the financial statements.
Okay, the assertion. Why is that 3rd step, linking to the assertion, So crucial. I can just imagine a student under pressure thinking, look, I stated the risk, I used the scenario, surely that's enough.
Yeah, I get that. But it's not quite enough for top marks. Because assertions, like occurrence, existence, completeness, valuation, they are the fundamental language of the auditor. It's what the audit is actually testing.
Oh,
So when you link the risk to a specific assertion, you're immediately signaling to the examiner, I understand the legal purpose of this audit, which is testing whether management's claims their assertions about the financials are true.
it elevates the answer.
It really does. It moves your answer from just being like an accounting concern to being a structured audit issue. If you
Yeah.
use the model language from the report, something like, there's a risk that revenue has been overstated due to early recognition of sales near year end. This specifically affects the occurrence assertion.
Occurrence meaning, did the sale actually happen in that period?
Precisely. That specific structured assertion-linked sentence, that scores the full marks. Anything less is leaving marks on the table.
That brings us perfectly to mistake number 2, which feels related but broader. It's the macro failure of just. No application to the scenario at all.
This is the killer. This is the core reason so many candidates get stuck in the 40s. They just can't seem to break through.
And the reports back this up.
Oh, yeah. The December 2020 report notes explicitly that candidates copy textbook knowledge without applying it to the case details. This limits marks significantly.
So just regurgitating definitions or standard risks.
Exactly. If the scenario tells you the company just acquired a major subsidiary, every relevant answer you give, risk, procedure, whatever, must somehow reference that acquisition, or the consolidation risk, or the goodwill calculation, something specific.
But let me push back a bit. If I'm under a serious time crunch, isn't it just faster to list the theoretical risk? Are you really telling me forcing that specific detail, like the subsidiary name or the purchase price, into every point is genuinely worth the extra, say, 15 seconds it takes?
Yes, absolutely, 100% worth it. Because the generic point might score you 1 mark, maybe, if you're lucky, and the examiner's feeling generous. But the applied point, using scenario detail, that can score 2 or 3 marks, because the examiner isn't grading your memory of the textbook definitions. They're grading your ability to function as a junior auditor facing a real client situation.
Right. Simulating the job.
Exactly. If you mention that the client has, say, a $5 million receivable that's been overdue for 120 days, specific details from the case, you prove you've read the case, you've maybe done a quick materiality check in your head, and you understand the valuation implication.
To earn the mark?
You've earned the mark. Generic statements are just, wow, they're just filler. They show nothing beyond basic recall.
Got it. Loud and clear, generic equals no marks, or very few.
Okay.
Moving to mistake number 3, misunderstanding audit procedures. This is where that gap between theory and application really seems to trip people up.
It really does. The September 2022 report highlighted this specifically. Candidates often confuse substantive procedures with tests of controls, or they write procedures that are just too vague, like vague assertions themselves.
That's a critical distinction, isn't it? Tests of controls versus substantive procedures. Students consistently mix these up.
They do, and it highlights a fundamental lack of understanding of the audit life cycle, or perhaps the purpose of different types of evidence.
Okay, let's spend a moment on this because it's often explained too quickly, I think. What is the fundamental difference the examiner is looking for between a test of control, 2CE, and a substantive procedure, SP?
Think about the objective and maybe the timing. A test of control is checking if the control the client has in place actually works. Is it operating effectively?
Like checking for a signature.
Exactly. Checking if a supervisor actually signed off on a journal entry, like the procedure requires them to. You might do this testing interim, before the year end or early in the final audit. The objective is to gather assurance about the system's reliability. Can we rely on this control?
Okay, testing the system.
Yeah.
And a substantive procedure.
That's different. That checks the accuracy and the validity of the actual numbers in the financial statements, the balances, the transactions.
So direct evidence on the figures themselves.
Direct evidence. Its objective is to gather evidence that the figures, the revenue number, the inventory value are correct. Or, technically, not materially misstated. Examples would be recalculating depreciation or physically inspecting inventory items or sending debtor confirmations.
And this is always mandatory.
Always mandatory, regardless of how good you think the controls are. And it usually happens closer to year-end or even post-year-end. The examiner sees confusion between 2Gs and SPs as a failure to grasp the fundamental purpose of gathering audit evidence. It's a big deal.
That distinction is absolutely key then. So the remedy, the required structure for writing a good substantive procedure, it has to be precise. The report says you must specify what to do, why you are doing it, the objective, and the source of evidence.
Precisely. Those three components. What, why, source. If any one of those is missing, the answer is incomplete and you won't get full marks for that procedure.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's take revenue cutoff. A good procedure would be inspect the signed sales invoice and the corresponding delivery note, that's the what in the source, to confirm that the sale occurred before the year-end cutoff date. That's the why. The objective, testing the occurrence or cutoff assertion.
You have to connect the action to the purpose and the document.
Yes. If you just write, check the sales invoice, well, what are you checking it for? Which assertion are you testing? You'll only get partial credit, if any at all. That structure is vital.
Okay. Mistake number 4 seems almost simpler, but maybe more frustrating for the markers. It's about presentation. Lack of structure in narrative questions.
This one is genuinely baffling sometimes because it's so easy to fix. The March 2023 report, so quite recent, specifically complained that answers lacked headings, paragraphing, or question-specific formatting. And crucially, this hindered the examiner's ability to award marks.
Wait, hang on. The examiner complained that candidates still aren't using headings and basic formatting in 2023. That sounds like the easiest potential marks in the whole paper.
It absolutely is. But you have to remember, the examiner is marking hundreds, maybe thousands of scripts under intense time pressure.
Yeah, true.
If they have to wade through a solid wall of text trying to find your 3 distinct audit risks or your separate ethical threats, they might only spot 2. Or they might just get annoyed.
And an annoyed marker is not a generous marker.
Exactly. Your goal should be clarity over flair. Just use clear bullet points. Use specific subheadings that directly mirror the question's requirement, like Audit Risk 1 Revenue Overstatement or Ethical Threat Self-Review Threat.
Make their job easy.
Make the marker's job effortless, and they will reward you effortlessly. It's as simple as that.
We've definitely seen this pattern across all sorts of high-stakes professional exams. Presentation genuinely boosts perception, and that perception translates into marks.
Absolutely. It signals you're organized, you're in control of your answer, and frankly, that you respect the marker's time. It creates a positive impression before they've even fully assessed the content.
Right. Okay, finally, mistake number 5. Weak ethics and professional marks answers. Ethics is always there, it's mandatory, yet candidates consistently seem to drop the ball here.
It's true. The December 2021 report really hammered this home, and it was reinforced by a specific technical article back in 2020 as well. Ethics answers are very often too short, too vague, or they just list threats without any proper explanation.
So just saying familiarity threat or self-interest threat isn't enough.
Not even close. That just shows you've maybe memorized the list from a flashcard. It doesn't show you understand how that threat arises in the specific scenario you've been given.
So predictably, we need the structured approach again. What's the mandatory 3-part ethics structure required to score properly here?
It's what the report calls the TAS format. Simple acronym to remember. TAS.
Okay, TAS.
1. Threat. Name the specific threat using the proper terminology, self-review, advocacy, familiarity, self-interest, intimidation. 2. Arise. Explain how this threat arises in this specific scenario. This is where you connect the dots using the case study details. For example, the firm prepared the valuation for the asset they're now being asked to audit. That's the how.
Got it. Connect the theory to the facts.
And 3. Safeguard. Suggest a tailored safeguard. And tailored is the crucial word here.
Tailoring again. It seems like application and tailoring are the recurring themes here. That's the non-negotiable step that differentiates a pass from a fail on ethics questions.
Yes, absolutely. A generic safeguard like conduct an independent review is weak. It might get you minimal credit.
So what's a tailored one?
Okay, using that self-review example. Given the valuation was performed by the firm's tax department, an audit partner from a different office, perhaps someone with no involvement in providing tax services to this client, should be appointed to independently review the valuation work papers and assess the appropriateness of the assumptions and methodology used. This specific action mitigates the self-review threat identified.
Much more specific. Shows actual thought.
Exactly. That level of specificity demonstrates professional judgment, which is what they're looking for.
Okay, that transition from common failures to what actually constitutes strategic success brings us perfectly into Section 2. We've cataloged the failure modes, the things not to do. So the natural next question is, what does success actually look like on paper? This section details the 5 keys to generous marking the things the examiner actively praises and rewards in the reports.
And these keys are essentially, as you'd expect, the mirror image of the 5 mistakes we just discussed. It really proves how remarkably consistent the examiner is in their expectations year after year.
Okay, key number 1. Audit risk answers that use assertions. This is so important. We're hitting it again, but this time focusing explicitly on the success side.
Yeah, it's worth repeating because it's fundamental. The December 2021 report stated quite clearly that high-scoring candidates linked risks to financial statement assertions, and this improved the precision of their answers. Precision is the operative word there.
Why precision?
Well, when you use an assertion like occurrence, you immediately focus the implied audit work. You're telling the examiner the primary concern is checking if recorded transactions actually happened in the period.
Okay.
If you say valuation, you're narrowing the focus to checking if the amount recorded is appropriate according to accounting standards. It scopes the necessary work.
So using the assertion is essentially doing part of the audit planning thought process for the marker. It shows a higher level of understanding.
Absolutely. It demonstrates you're thinking like an auditor plans. Let's go back to that revenue example. A weaker student might just write, revenue is overstated because the client is recognizing sales too early. Okay, fair enough.
But a high-scoring candidate.
A high-scoring candidate writes something more like, the risk of overstatement of revenue, specifically affecting the occurrence assertion, exists due to the potential for premature revenue recognition on contracts signed near the year-end. This dictates that our audit approach must therefore focus heavily on detailed sales cutoff testing procedures around the year-end date.
Much more professional, much clearer.
Exactly. The value of explicitly using the term assertion is that it transforms a general observation into a properly structured audit conclusion, ready for planning the response.
Right. Key 2. Well-structured audit procedures. We introduced the what-why source model earlier. Let's be really specific now about why the examiner loves this structure so much.
The September 2022 report confirmed it again. This exact structure leads to significantly higher scores. Why? Because it proves the student understands the audit objective behind the procedure, not just the physical action itself.
It's not just ticking a box.
No. If you just write, say, recalculate depreciation charge, you've stated the what, but you've completely missed the why. Why are you recalculating it? To verify its accuracy, to check the policy is applied consistently. The mark is awarded for knowing both the procedure and its purpose.
Okay, let's break down that formula again, maybe using a different area just to hammer it home. How about, say, additions to property, plant, and equipment, PPE?
Good one. Okay, let's think about testing the existence assertion for a new machine they bought. The structure would be what? Physically inspect the new machine listed in the non-current asset register. Why? To verify the physical existence of the asset at the year-end date. Source. By tracing the specific machine identified back to the supplier's purchase invoice and confirming its entry details in the asset register.
What? Why? Source. Clear as day.
And the examiner reports literally describe procedures written this way as easy marks if structured well, because it really is just a formula you can apply again and again across different balance sheet areas.
Key 3 is back to presentation, clarity in headings and narrative questions.
Yeah.
This just reinforces that making life easy for the marker pays off.
It really does. The June 2020 report pointed out that professional formatting, clear headings, decent spacing between points made it easier for the marker to award all relevant points.
Just think about it from their perspective.
Exactly. A disorganized, rambling answer forces the examiner to become a detective, hunting for your points, trying to guess your meaning. They don't have time for that.
Whereas a structured answer.
A structured answer, using a clear format like Audit Risk 1 details, assertion link, audit response procedure, it guides them directly to the credit-worthy points. It's a purely strategic move that significantly boosts your perceived professionalism and makes scoring easier for them.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, key 4. Ethics explained, not just listed. This is where we lock in the value of that TAS format you mentioned earlier.
Yes. The December 2021 report specifically noted that stronger answers tailored the safeguard effectively to the specific scenario. This confirms why you need the full sequence: threat, arise, safeguard.
Let's use a different example this time. How about a self-interest threat?
Okay, good one. Let's say the scenario mentions the audit fee for last year is still outstanding, it's quite material, and the client finance director has hinted that payment depends on getting an unmodified audit report this year.
Ooh, classic pressure tactic.
Textbook self-interest threat. So the TA's approach. Threat. Self-interest threat. Arise. Explain how the overdue material fee creates undue pressure on the audit firm's objectivity. There's a risk the firm might compromise its independence or the quality of the audit work to ensure they get paid.
Right. And the safeguard, the S-guard.
Safeguard. This needs to be decisive and professional. For example, consult the firm's ethics partner immediately to discuss the situation. Communicate clearly with the client's audit committee or those charged with governance about the overdue fees and the inappropriateness of linking payment to the audit opinion. Inform the client that no further significant work, including signing the audit report, will commence until the outstanding fees are settled. If payment is not forthcoming promptly, the firm must seriously consider resigning from the engagement.
Wow, okay, that's a very specific escalating safeguard, tailored to the threat of non-payment.
Exactly. It's not just review the work. It's a concrete plan of action that protects the firm's independence. That's what scores the marks.
Okay. Finally, key 5. Professional marks secured with real judgment. This is about going beyond the structure, isn't it? How do candidates actually demonstrate they're thinking like an auditor, not just reciting rules from a textbook?
Yeah, this is where the extra professional skills marks often come in. The March 2023 report said candidates who showed professional skepticism, commercial awareness, and just general clarity of expression earned these marks.
Skepticism and commercial awareness, what do those look like in an answer?
Skepticism means actively questioning management's assumptions and estimates, especially in judgmental areas, not just accepting things at face value. Commercial awareness means understanding the client's business, their industry, the pressures they face, and how that might impact the audit risk.
Can you give us some examples of phrases or ways of thinking that signal that commercial judgment to the marker?
Sure. Instead of just noting a risk, you embed a judgmental response within your writing. For example, if the scenario says the client is expanding rapidly into a new, highly competitive market. Given the highly competitive nature of this new market segment, the client's aggressive revenue recognition policy for new contracts must be viewed with significant professional skepticism. This necessitates extensive cutoff testing and potentially seeking legal advice on the contract terms.
Okay, linking the business context to the audit response.
Or, another example, if the client is consistently late providing key documents. The continued delay in providing supporting documentation for the valuation of the new brand acquisition represents a potentially significant scope limitation. This requires immediate escalation to the audit engagement partner to determine the potential impact on our ability to gather sufficient appropriate evidence and ultimately on the audit opinion itself.
Again, showing you recognize the implications of the facts.
Exactly. These kinds of phrases show you're not just listing facts from the case. You're evaluating their significance from an auditor's perspective. That's what the professional marks are designed to reward.
Thinking like an auditor, writing
Yeah.
like one too. That really seems to be the ultimate payoff of embedding this structured approach.
Yeah.
We've covered the fundamental structure, the right attitude, and if you are struggling with the execution, if you want to move beyond just generic study notes, remember this structure really is the key. And you can find the full blueprint for all these structures, the language templates, everything we're discussing in that Premium Examiner Strategy Report. It's available for download right now. The link's in the description below the video. Grab it if you need that extra edge.
Definitely. Okay, so now that we've covered the how to write part, let's pivot a bit and talk about the exam itself. Section 3 is where we detail the predictable structure of the AA exam paper and how you can strategically target those crucial 70 marks available in Section B.
Right. First up, Section A, Objective Test Questions, or OTQs, worth 30 marks in total. Now, even though they're multiple choice, the examiner report suggests they're actually quite challenging, not just simple recall questions.
No, they're far more complex than that. The June 2021 report specifically noted the difficulty here. It said, candidates struggled with applying knowledge to case-based scenarios, especially where multiple concepts are tested within a single OTQ.
So a single multiple choice question might test several things at once.
Exactly. You might get a short mini case study, maybe 2 or 3 sentences describing a situation at a client, and then the question might require you to first assess a risk based on that scenario, perhaps mentally calculate materiality, and then choose the single most appropriate audit procedure from the 4 options given, all in one question.
Wow. That requires structured thinking, even when you're just clicking a box.
It really does. You can't just guess. The common topics tested in Section A covered the entire breadth of the paper, just in miniature form. Risk assessment, definitely. Procedures often focusing on high-risk areas like inventory, revenue, PPZ. Assertions are frequently tested. Ethics scenarios come up, internal controls questions, and understanding audit report modifications. It's all in there.
So what's the smart tip for tackling Section A effectively?
Use your scratch paper or the digital equivalent. Seriously. As you read the mini scenario for each OTQ, quickly jot down the key facts or keywords, things like new IT system installed, related party transaction identified, going concern warning mentioned, valuation expert used.
Force yourself to analyze first.
Yes. Force yourself to analyze the situation briefly like a detective gathering clues before you even look at the answer options. Treat Section A almost like 3 10-mark mini scenarios rolled together rather than just 30 disconnected individual questions. That mindset helps focus your application skills.
Okay, good tip. Now, moving to the main event. Section B, the constructive response questions, worth a hefty 70 marks. And question 1 is consistently the biggest single chunk, right? Always 30 marks.
Q1 is the absolute cornerstone of the Section B paper. It's consistently focused on audit planning and performing detailed risk analysis. The December 2020 report confirmed this pattern holds.
What does it typically test?
It tests your ability to synthesize a lot of information from the client scenario, financial data snippets, internal control weaknesses mentioned, external industry factors perhaps, and weave it all into a cohesive initial audit strategy. Identifying the key risks is paramount.
Now, the strategy report we're drawing on strongly recommends what it calls the RAP approach for structuring answers in this section. Can you explain RAP?
Sure, RAP stands for risk, identify the specific risk, linking it to the scenario, assertion, state the key financial statement assertion affected, and procedure, outline a relevant audit procedure to respond to that specific risk.
Why is combining the risk identification and the initial procedure idea in one structured answer so effective, particularly in Q1, the planning question?
Because Q1 is fundamentally testing your planning judgment. A real auditor doesn't just spot a risk and then stop. They immediately start thinking, okay, what are we going to do about that?
Right, the response.
Exactly. So by providing the full cycle in your answer, risk identified, assertion pinpointed, and initial procedure suggested, you show the examiner that your planning thought process is complete and logical. It mirrors what happens in practice.
And this is a high-value opportunity.
It's probably the single highest value opportunity in the entire paper to secure large blocks of marks if you maintain that RAP structure consistently for each risk you identify. And remember, Q1 will almost certainly include some calculations, usually materiality, and often throws in an ethics threat or asks for professional judgment on a specific planning issue too. It's multifaceted.
Okay, RAP for Q1. Got it. Next up is Q2, which is typically focused on procedures or evidence gathering, worth 20 marks. This is where we apply that why source model we discussed earlier, repeatedly.
Precisely. Q2's main function, according to the September 2022 report analysis, is to test your practical, detailed application of audit procedures. It tests whether candidates really know what specific action to take, why they're doing it, which assertion it tests, and where the evidence is going to come from the source.
So the strategy here is just strict adherence to that model.
Absolutely strict adherence. What, why, source. Every single procedure you write. You cannot afford to be vague here. If the procedure relates to inventory, you must mention specific sources like stock count sheets, supplier invoices for valuation, or maybe perpetual inventory records.
And for receivables.
You must mention specific sources like sending customer confirmations, reviewing the aged debtor listing, or examining post-year-end cash receipts. Avoid weak phrases like check the documents or make sure it's correct. They score nothing.
Commonly tested areas in Q2 seem quite predictable based on the tracker. Highly rotational.
Yes, very much so. The rotation reliably covers a core list. Receivables, existence, valuation, inventory, existence, valuation, and maybe cutoff, revenue recognition and cutoff, non-current asset additions and disposals, existence, valuation, rights and obligations, and sometimes payroll testing, occurrence, accuracy.
So they might test, say, receivables and PPE procedures in one sitting.
Exactly. They might ask for procedures covering 2 or 3 different areas from that list within the single 20-mark question. But the crucial point is the required structure for writing the procedure, what, why, source remains identical, regardless of which financial statement area is being tested.
So if you practice applying that structure to those 5 core areas, you should be well prepared for whatever Q2 throws at you.
That's the strategy. If you can write a perfect what-why source procedure for each of those 5 areas, you've basically covered the Q2 curriculum from a practical skills perspective.
Okay. Finally, Q3. Also 20 marks. This often covers the auditor's report itself, or sometimes a combination of ethics and internal control issues. You mentioned the reporting section is often where panic sets in for students.
It really is. The March 2023 report noted, yet again, that candidates often struggle to correctly identify the required type of audit opinion, or, crucially, to adequately justify any proposed modification to that opinion.
You can't just throw out qualified opinion and hope for the best.
Absolutely not. You need the justification, the logic trail. Why is it qualified? What's the issue? How material is it? Is it pervasive?
So the recommended strategy is to actually start reporting questions by defining the logic for the required opinion type. And we need to properly internalize that distinction between material and pervasive.
Precisely. Pervasiveness is the absolute key concept that separates a qualified opinion for material but not pervasive issues from the more severe adverse opinion for material and pervasive misstatements, or a disclaimer of opinion for material and pervasive inability to obtain evidence.
How do you define pervasive simply?
Think of it like this. Is the issue confined to one specific area, or does it fundamentally undermine the financial statements as a whole? If a misstatement or lack of evidence affects numerous items, or relates to something absolutely fundamental like going concern, or essentially renders the entire set of accounts potentially misleading, then it's likely pervasive.
But if it's significant but isolated to one area, like inventory valuation only,
Then it's probably material, but not pervasive. Starting your Q3 reporting answer with that explicit analysis, identify the issue, assess its materiality, assess its pervasiveness, state the impact on the opinion. That's how you unlock the full credit.
and if Q3 is ethics instead.
Then we revert straight back to that mandatory TAS model we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Threat, arise, safeguard, no shortcuts.
So looking across Section B, the core insight here, really driven home by the data in the report, seems crystal clear. Audit risk, Q1, audit procedures, Q2, and audit reporting ethics, Q3, consistently account for something like 80% of the total paper marks across most exam settings.
That's right. If you can master the required structures for those 3 core areas and apply them consistently to the scenarios, you are in a very strong position to pass this exam.
Master those 3 structured areas, and you pass. Sounds like a plan.
It's a strategic focus, which brings us neatly to Section 4, where we dig into the actual data. We analyze the findings from the 10-sitting topic tracker that's included in the full report covering June 2019 right through to December 2023.
Okay, this is the analytical core. This proves the patterns we've been discussing aren't just theoretical. They're observable and reliable over a long period.
Exactly. This is the evidence.
So let's talk about that consistency we found. Just how predictable is Section B based on those 10 sittings of data?
In terms of the topic type tested in each question slot, extremely predictable. The specific client details change every time, obviously, but the type of task remains remarkably stable.
Okay, give us the specifics. Q1, the big 30 marker.
Q1 is always audit risk and planning. Always. The examiner's #1 priority seems to be testing your ability to scope out an audit based on initial information. Look at the tracker data in the report. December 2023, Sep 2023, June 2023, Mar 2023, session after session, all fundamentally planning and risk assessment focused.
And they combine it with other elements.
Yes, they'll always weave in materiality calculations based on the scenario financials. They'll usually include 1 or maybe 2 ethics threats emerging from the planning information. And they'll ask for commentary on the overall audit strategy or specific high-risk areas. The fact that the very first big question is always focused on risk assessment really tests that core professional judgment required at the AA level.
Makes sense. And Q2, the 20-mark procedures question. How predictable is that one?
Also rigidly predictable in its nature. It is always heavily focused on generating specific audit procedures. And the rotation of financial statement items tested is pretty much confined to that fixed list we mentioned earlier.
Remind us of that list.
Revenue, recognition, cutoff, inventory, existence, valuation, PPE, additions, disposals, valuation, payroll, accuracy, occurrence, and bank cash, completeness, existence. It's rare for Q2 to deviate significantly outside those core transaction cycles.
So if you practice writing procedures for those 5 key areas, using the mandatory three-part structure.
You have effectively addressed the entire likely Q2 curriculum. You just need to be ready for the question to potentially ask you to apply that structure to, say, both inventory and receivables within the same 20-mark requirement.
Right. And Q3 rotates predictably between reports and ethics controls.
Yes. They tend to alternate, or sometimes they might combine them, perhaps asking for the implications of an ethical threat on the audit report, for instance. They're testing your ability to either justify the different types of audit report modifications, qualified adverse disclaimer, or, if it's controls focused, to analyze a specific weakness and propose a practical recommendation using that specific three-part internal control structure. Weakness, risk, recommendation.
So the topics are highly predictable, but the critical skill remains tailoring the application to the unique details of the scenario each time.
That's the absolute essence of it. Predictable format, but requires unique application every single sitting.
Okay. This high degree of predictability allows us to generate a really laser-targeted list of must-revise core topics. If you had to boil it down, say for someone in their final week of study, what are the 3 absolute tactical priorities emerging from this analysis?
Okay, laser focus. Priority 1, audit risk for Q1. You absolutely must master linking the risk identified back to a specific assertion. You need to be able to quantify materiality using the scenario data provided. And you must practice writing one tailored specific audit procedure in response to each risk you identify. Get that full RAP lifecycle right. Risk, assertion, procedure.
Okay, risk is priority 1. Priority 2.
Audit procedures for Q2. Focus relentlessly on those 5 key financial statement items we keep mentioning: revenue, inventory, PPE, receivables, payroll, and practice using the absolute mandatory 3-part answer structure, what, why, source, until it becomes second nature, like muscle memory. Don't even think about writing a procedure any other way.
Structure, structure, structure. Got it.
Huh.
And priority 3.
Ethics and reports for Q3. This means achieving mastery of identifying ethical threats using the TAS format. Name the threat plus explain how it arises plus suggest a tailored safeguard. And for reports, it means mastering the audit report modification logic, understanding materiality and pervasiveness, and being able to clearly justify your chosen opinion type.
So if you focus intense effort only on mastering the structures and application for those 3 core areas, risk, procedures, ethics reports, you've effectively covered around 80% of the likely marks in Section B.
Based on the last 5 years of exams, yes. That's where the vast majority of the constructed response marks are consistently allocated. It's the strategic sweet spot.
That structure provides the strategic core. Now, what about the specific tactical advice? What's the practical practice plan advocated by the report to build that muscle memory?
The advice is very quantifiable and targeted. It stresses: don't just passively read your notes in the final weeks. You need active practice. The minimum recommended active practice is write out answers for 5 full audit risks, ensuring you include materiality calculations and assertion links based on a practice scenario.
Okay, 5 full risks. What else?
Practice writing out 10 detailed audit procedures. Make sure you cover at least 2 examples each for receivables, revenue, PPE, payroll, and inventory. And critically, use the strict what, why source structure every single time you write one, no exceptions.
10 procedures, structured perfectly. And what about the reporting element for Q3?
Crucially, you must revise how to actually draft or modify the key phrases within an auditor's report. And more importantly, practice explaining the reasoning behind the modification. Don't just memorize the definitions of qualified versus adverse. Practice applying the logic to many scenarios. For instance, take a past paper question and practice writing out the justification paragraph for why a qualified except for opinion is needed due to a material but non-pervasive inventory valuation issue. That active practice of justification is what differentiates the successful candidate.
Right. And to wrap up this strategic core section, let's just hammer home one more time those high-frequency mistakes, the things that students absolutely should stop doing immediately. The so-called sins of application that keep appearing in examiner reports.
Yeah, the list is short, but making these errors is incredibly costly in terms of marks. Number 1, stop listing risks without specific concrete application linked back to the scenario details provided.
No generic risks.
Number 2, stop writing vague, useless procedures like check the documents or review the numbers or ensure it's correct. They are meaningless.
Use what, why source.
Number 3, stop confusing an emphasis of matter, EOM paragraph with a qualification. They serve completely different purposes. EOM is for drawing attention to something material that is properly disclosed, like significant going concern uncertainty. A qualification is for when something is materially misstated or you couldn't get enough evidence. Get that distinction clear.
Crucial difference.
Yeah.
And the last one.
Finally, never ever fail to mention the relevant assertion being tested or the materiality consideration when you're discussing a risk or a potential misstatement. These elements demonstrate audit thinking. Avoiding these 4 recurring errors, which have been identified consistently over the past 5 years of reports, can genuinely be the direct difference between scraping a fail at 45% and comfortably passing with a score in the 60s.
Fix those 4 things, apply the structures, and you're well on your way.
Yeah.
Look, if you're feeling overwhelmed by the sheer volume of ACCA material, honestly, this kind of structured, examiner-focused approach is your lifeline. It cuts through the noise, and the report we've been dissecting today gives you exactly that laser-like focus. Again, if you want your own copy, you can download the Premium Examiner Strategy Report right now from the SmartPass Gumroad store. Just use the link we've provided in the description below this video. It's worth the investment.
Definitely. Okay, moving into Section 5 now. Here we analyze what we call the technical backbone, the insights from the ACCA's own technical articles. This is where we translate that often dense knowledge into actionable scoring language for your exam answers.
This feels like a huge value add because, let's face it, most students probably treat those technical articles as optional background reading, right?
That's often the case, yes. They see them as supplementary. But actually, they are frequently the direct source of the examiner's preferred terminology, structure, and the specific issues they choose to test. Ignoring them is a mistake.
So let's digest the key ones. The report highlights the top 5 relevant articles from that 2019-2023 period. Let's start with Article 1, which was titled simply Audit Risk. How does that article directly inform the scoring structure for Q1?
Well, it directly feeds into how you should approach Q1. The article stresses that proper risk assessment isn't just about listing potential problems. It's a direct function of understanding the client's business, its industry, its specific environment.
So application again.
Exactly. Therefore, the SmartPass application strategy that comes out of this focuses heavily on embedding tailored context into your risk description. It pushes you beyond just stating a generic risk, like risk of inventory obsolescence, and into stating a justifiable concern based on the scenario.
Can you give an example of phrasing?
Sure. The article discusses how management bias can significantly affect risk. So in your answer, instead of just saying risk of revenue overstatement, you might write something reflecting that insight. Given the significant pressure on management to meet market expectations outlined in the scenario, and the fact that revenue has increased 40% year-on-year with no corresponding increase in marketing spend or production capacity detailed, this suggests a high inherent risk of potential revenue manipulation near the year-end, particularly affecting the existence and cutoff assertions.
Much stronger. That language signals professional skepticism, which the article explicitly promotes.
Precisely. It shows you're connecting the dots between the business context and the audit risk.
Okay, Article 2 is described in the report as the Q2 Bible, audit evidence. How does this reinforce the procedure structure?
This article is basically the theoretical underpinning for the what-why source structure we keep emphasizing for Q2 procedures. It outlines the different types of audit evidence and, crucially, discusses the relative reliability of different sources.
Like external evidence being better than internal.
Exactly. External evidence, like a bank confirmation, is generally considered more reliable than purely internal evidence, like a company-prepared schedule. Direct observation by the auditor is powerful evidence. Analytical procedures can be effective, but need corroboration. The article lays all this out.
So how does that translate to marks?
When the examiner sees a procedure you've written that clearly specifies the source of the evidence and ideally implies you've chosen a reliable source, for example, inspect the external bank confirmation versus just review the bank reconciliation, they recognize that you understand the evidence reliability hierarchy established in this technical article. It reinforces why that specificity in the source part of your procedure is absolutely non-negotiable for good marks.
Right, it shows deeper understanding. Okay, Article 3. Ethics in audit. How does the article guide the use of the TAS model?
It's critical for ethics questions, whether they appear in Q1 or Q3. The article outlines the ACCA's conceptual framework for ethics, the 5 fundamental principles, the 5 categories of threats, self-interest, self-review, advocacy, familiarity, intimidation, and the general need for safeguards.
So it provides the theory.
It provides the theory. Our TAS strategy Threat, arise, safeguard takes that theory and forces the practical application that the examiner demands. The real key, highlighted by the article's emphasis on effectiveness, is in tailoring the safeguard.
Tailoring the safeguard again.
Yes. The article states safeguards must be appropriate and effective in the circumstances. So, if the threat identified is, say, familiarity, because the audit engagement partner has been on the client for 10 years and is maybe getting a bit too close to the finance director.
What's an ineffective safeguard?
An ineffective safeguard would be just suggesting increased staff training on independence. That doesn't address the specific familiarity risk with that partner.
An effective tailored one.
An effective safeguard, driven by the article's principles, would be decisive. The current engagement partner must be rotated off the audit immediately, in line with ethical guidelines regarding long association. An independent partner review should also be conducted for key judgments made on the audit during the last 2 years of the previous partner's tenure to ensure objectivity was maintained. See? Specific, decisive action tailored to the threat.
Very clear. Article 4, audit reporting. This is where those Q3 marks are often won or lost through precise justification, you said.
Absolutely. This article is key for understanding how to justify any proposed modification to the audit report. It emphasizes that the auditor must follow a specific logical flow. First, identify the cause. Is it a misstatement in the accounts or an inability to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence? Second, assess its materiality. Third, assess its pervasiveness. And only then, fourth, determine the appropriate opinion.
Cause, right arrow, materiality, right arrow, pervasiveness, right arrow, opinion.
You need that logical chain in your answer. We really need to internalize the scenario-based application of pervasive. Let's take a concrete example. Imagine a scenario where the client has failed to provide any supporting evidence for the valuation of a significant intangible asset, maybe a brand name, and that asset represents, say, 30% of total assets.
Okay, material, and you can't get evidence.
Right. The article guides you to analyze the impact. Since this inability to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence relates to a material balance, and because its potential impact could be so significant as to undermine the reliability of the financial statements as a whole, affecting key ratios, potential solvency, etc., it's likely to be considered pervasive.
And therefore,
a disclaimer of opinion is justified. You must articulate that specific logic material issue, inability to get evidence, pervasive impact. Therefore, disclaimer to score the top marks in a Q3 reporting question. You can't just jump to the answer.
makes sense. Finally, Article 5, internal controls. How does this influence answers when control weaknesses come up?
This article, which often feeds into questions in either Q2 or Q3, sets the bar quite high for the quality of recommendations you should make when you identify a control weakness. The required structure, driven by the article's focus on practical effectiveness and remediation, is very strict.
What is that structure?
It's a three-part structure for each control point you discuss. First, clearly state the weakness you've identified in the client system described in the scenario. Second, explain the potential risk or consequence arising from that weakness. What could go wrong? Which assertion is threatened? Third, provide a practical, specific recommendation to remedy that weakness.
Okay, weakness, risk, recommendation. Can you give us a full example following that structure?
Sure. Let's say the scenario describes a weakness in cash handling. Weakness. The current system allows the same cashier who receives cash payments from customers over the counter to also be responsible for recording those cash receipts in the sales ledger and preparing the daily bank deposit slip.
Okay, clear lack of segregation. What's the risk?
Risk. This significant lack of segregation of duties creates a high risk of fraud, specifically the misappropriation of cash receipts. Theft. The cashier could potentially steal cash received and then attempt to conceal the theft by manipulating the sales ledger records, thereby impacting the completeness assertion for cash and potentially the accuracy of receivables.
Got it. And the recommendation?
Recommendation. To mitigate this risk, the duties of physically handling cash, recording cash receipts, and preparing bank deposits must be strictly segregated. Ideally, cashiers should only handle cash and issue receipts. A separate accounts receivable clerk should record the receipts in the ledger based on receipt copies, and a supervisor or different finance team member should independently prepare and make the daily bank deposit, reconciling it to the cashier's summary and the ledger postings.
Weakness, risk, recommendation. Very structured, very practical. That guarantees marks if you follow it.
If you follow that structure for each control point required, yes, it's designed to capture all the available marks for internal control analysis questions.
That is extremely valuable insight. Taking the knowledge from these 5 core technical articles and translating it directly into these structured answer formats gives candidates a massive, massive advantage. Now let's talk specifically about language. The report includes model answer language templates. How do we actually write like the students who consistently pass?
Yeah, the language you use is the final polish, isn't it? It's about sounding professional and precise. For audit risk in Q1, we know you use the 3-part RAP structure, but the language, especially for that crucial assertion impact line, should demonstrate that professional mindset.
So instead of just saying it affects valuation.
Right. Use slightly more formal, impactful phrasing like, "This lack of regular review for obsolete items significantly affects the valuation assertion for inventory and could potentially lead to a material overstatement of current assets on the balance sheet, necessitating a specific change in our planned audit strategy towards more rigorous net realizable value testing."
Okay, linking it explicitly to the audit strategy.
Yeah.
For audit procedures in Q2, you said the power is in avoiding those vague phrases entirely.
Absolutely. We must use the precise what, why source template consistently. So instead of writing something lazy like, "Check the payroll records," we need to write, "What? Reperform the calculation of the year-end wages accrual. Why? To verify the accuracy and completeness of the liability balance recorded in the financial statements. Source? Using the client's internal payroll register for the final pay period, employee timesheets, and relevant employment contracts as the source of evidence."
Specificity is currency, you said. Every word contributes to earning a mark.
That's the mindset. Every component of that structure needs to be there, clearly articulated.
And for audit report logic in Q3, what's the critical sequence in terms of language?
Always follow that cause, right arrow, materiality to right arrow, pervasiveness, right arrow, opinion sequence in your justification. You state the issue, clearly say, "The lack of supporting documentation for a material intangible asset valuation, assess its impact using materiality and pervasiveness," and then justify the resulting opinion type.
What's the key language to use for the opinion itself?
The key differentiator language is around pervasiveness. You need phrases like, "Since the identified misstatement in inventory valuation is considered material but not pervasive in its effect on the financial statements as a whole, a qualified except for opinion is required." Compare that to. "Since the inability to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding the going concern assumption is considered material and potentially pervasive, casting significant doubt on the company's ability to continue operating, a disclaimer of opinion is required." That explicit link between pervasiveness and opinion type is crucial.
Got it. And the report summarizes an overarching writing rule, doesn't it? A strategic rule that ties all this application advice together.
Yes, it's simple but profound. For every paragraph you write, every bullet point you make in Section B, you should mentally check. Does this answer 3 questions for the examiner? 1, what's the issue here? 2, why does it matter? The impact risk assertion. 3, what should we, as auditors, do about it? The procedure safeguard report implication.
What's the issue? Why does it matter? What should we do?
If your answer, your point, can't clearly address all 3 of those questions using the specific context from the scenario, then you are probably not scoring full marks for that point. It's a great self-check mechanism as you write.
Excellent advice. Okay, that brings us to our final section, Section 6, Execution Strategy. This is all about the practicalities, the time plan, and final rules. Knowing all this content and structure is one thing. Applying it effectively under the pressure of the real exam is the final crucial hurdle.
Exactly. This is where preparation meets performance. The total exam time is 180 minutes for 100 marks. Simple math says that's 1.8 minutes per mark.
But the report warns against just dividing the time evenly, right?
Yes. Top performers don't just divide time by marks. They prioritize. They allocate time based on the perceived mental complexity and mark density of each question. Q1 needs more thinking time than Q2, even if the marks per minute look similar on paper.
Okay, so let's review the highly effective time plan recommended in the report. How should candidates strategically allocate those precious 180 minutes?
Right. Section A, the 30 marks of OTQs, gets allocated 35 minutes. That's actually a bit less than the strict 1.8 minutes per mark. It forces efficiency. You need to read the mini-scenarios quickly, identify the core issue, and eliminate wrong choices decisively. Don't get bogged down here.
35 minutes for Section A. What about Section B, Q1, the big 30 marker?
Q1 gets the longest single allocation, 50 minutes. You deliberately give Q1 extra time because it's the most complex, scenario-heavy question. It requires reading and absorbing the most detail, performing planning tasks like materiality calculations, identifying multiple structured risks using RAP, potentially dealing with an ethics issue. It needs proper thinking and planning time.
And crucial within that 50 minutes.
You absolutely must use the first 5 minutes of that 50 to quickly read the requirements, skim the scenario, and plan your answer structure. Jot down your main risk areas, the assertions, maybe the key figures for materiality. Label your plan headings. That planning investment saves time later.
50 minutes for Q1, including planning. What about Q2 and Q3, the 220 markers?
They get a slightly tighter allocation, 35 minutes each. For Q2 procedures, you have to rely entirely on that ingrained muscle memory for the what, why, source structure. Apply it quickly and efficiently using clear bullet points. You can't afford to hesitate or spend time thinking about how to structure the procedure. It needs to be automatic.
And for Q3?
Similar deal, 35 minutes. If it's reporting, take maybe 3 to 5 minutes at the start to mentally map out the cause, right arrow materiality, right arrow pervasiveness, right arrow opinion logic. If it's ethics, quickly apply the TAS model. Then deploy your professional judgment clearly and write efficiently to get the points down.
Okay, so 35 minutes for Section A, 50 for Q1, 35 for Q2, 35 for Q3. That adds up to 155 minutes. What about the rest?
That leaves a crucial 25 minutes allocated as buffer and review time at the end. This is not optional, it's a vital safety net.
What should you use that 25 minutes for?
Several critical things. First, check any calculations, especially materiality in Q1. A simple arithmetic error there can cascade and lose you easy marks. Second, go back to any Section AOTs you flagged as uncertain and give them a final look with a fresh eye.
And most importantly, for structure.
Most importantly, use this time for a final structural review of your Section B answers. Did you actually label every audit risk in Q1? Does every single procedure in Q2 clearly state the what, why, and the source? Does every ethical point in Q3 follow the TAS format? Did you justify your audit opinion logically? That final structural polish directly impacts your overall score, including those professional marks. Don't skip the review time.
Excellent. Let's just reinforce that labeling strategy one last time. The specific labels that examiners notice and appreciate.
It's all about signposting for the marker, making it easy for them to give you credit. For Q1 risks, use clear labels like Audit Risk 1 Inventory Valuation Issue, Assertion Affected, Valuation, Nature of Risk, Potential Obsolescence due to slow-moving product lines noted in scenario, Planned Procedure, Review Aged Inventory Report and discuss provisions with management. Clear, structured, complete.
And for Q2 procedures.
It's that bullet point plus 3-part format again. Procedure. Inspect the external bank confirmation received directly by the auditors, what source, to verify the completeness and existence of the year-end cash balance reported by the client. Why? Simple, repeatable, effective.
And for Q3.
Always start with the specific logic framework, either ethical threat identified, self-interest threat arising from, safeguard proposed, or for reporting, audit report implication. Qualified except for opinion required due to a material but non-pervasive scope limitation regarding. Start with the conclusion and structure, then elaborate.
Perfect. Finally then, let's close this deep dive with the final strategic exam rules. The ultimate checklist for success, distilled from those 5 years of examiner feedback data. The absolute do's and don'ts.
These are the non-negotiables for maximizing your score based on everything we've discussed. You absolutely must do the following.
Oh, go on.
Do. Label every single audit risk and every single procedure clearly and consistently. Do. Use the mandatory what, why, source structure for every procedure you write in Q2 without fail. Do. Time yourself rigidly doing full mock exams under proper exam conditions at least once or twice in the weeks leading up to the real thing. Do. Always try to link your identified risks back to a specific financial statement assertion and consider materiality whenever discussing a potential misstatement.
Okay, those are the key do's. Now, what about the things candidates absolutely don't dare do based on the examiner's most common and recurring complaints?
Right, the cardinal sins to avoid. Don't. List generic risks without specific context or application drawn directly from the scenario details. Don't. Write vague, lazy procedures like check the documents or ensure it is correct, they are worthless. Don't. Ever state in your answer that the primary objective of the statutory audit is to find fraud. That displays a fundamental misunderstanding and is guaranteed to lose you professional marks.
What's the primary objective then, briefly?
To express an opinion on whether the financial statements give a true and fair view or are fairly presented in all material respects, fraud detection is a secondary consideration, though important.
Got it. And the final don't.
And absolutely, don't spend ages over-explaining theoretical concepts and then fail to sufficiently apply that theory to the specific facts and figures provided in the scenario. Application is genuinely everything in this exam. Theory without application scores very little.
Application is everything. That's a great summary. We have just completed a really deep review of 5 years of ACCA ACA examiner complaints, and importantly, their praises too. We've translated the dense technical articles into actionable, practical structures, and we've provided the explicit scoring templates and language that work. You, listening now, should have a much clearer idea of exactly what the examiner is looking for.
And crucially, what most students unfortunately don't even bother to look into, the patterns, the structure, the emphasis on application.
That strategic upgrade, that knowledge of structure and consistent application, is exactly what this deep dive and the underlying report aims to provide. Remember, the full resource we've been discussing, the Premium Examiner Strategy Report, contains this entire roadmap laid out.
All the templates, the tracker, the detailed analysis.
So if you want that structured clarity, that feeling of control, and ultimately more confidence going into your AA exam, you can find the link to download the full report right there in the description below this video. It's a worthwhile investment in your success.
Absolutely. And, the core finding, I think, from this entire strategic deep dive, when you boil it all down, it's that the ability to clearly articulate why a principle matters and how it specifically applies to the unique scenario in front of you, that is the single biggest differentiator between a passing score and a failing score in AA.
It's not just about knowing the rules.
No. We often think of audit success as just memorizing rules and procedures, but the examiner reports consistently show they are actually rewarding professional judgment, applied thoughtfully through that consistent, repeatable structure we've outlined.
Structure enables the judgment to be seen.
Precisely. Which leads us to the final provocative thought for you, the listener, to take away from this deep dive.
Go on.
What assumptions are you still making about how to succeed in this exam? Are you perhaps still relying too much on just rote memorization of facts? Are you underestimating the power of structure? What needs to be challenged in your approach by adopting this kind of rigid, scoring-focused structure?
A really important question to reflect on. Trust the structured process, follow the application rules relentlessly.
And you've already secured that 65+ score. Go in with that confidence built on solid structure and targeted practice.